All right, welcome to the Purpose Over Profits podcast. My name is Jeremy Powers, owner of Powers Insurance Experts.
And I'm Jim Floyd, owner of Ascent Total Performance.
That's it. It's good to have you back, Jim.
Yeah, man. I missed the last couple episodes, but I got to say you did an awesome job being the solo host. And thanks for those two great guests. I think they did really great.
Oh yeah,
in those episodes too.
It was a lot of fun. They definitely helped with making it a lot easier. But man, you were certainly missed. You bring a lot of great insight.
Well, I appreciate that. It was kind of interesting for me because I always listen to our podcast and it's usually like, man, I really sound like that kind of thing. But it's like listening to the podcast and like really getting to learn about other people because it's usually like I'm focused on doing the interview and all that kind of stuff, and so it was a different kind of experience.
That's cool
with
man.
That too.
Well, I hear you have a very big event coming up this Friday. You say it's for your daughters.
Yeah,
but...
so I guess this will have already happened by the time this episode comes out, but for all those Swifties out there, so we know that Taylor Swift's new album is coming out on Friday, and my younger daughter is very much in that whole realm now, and so our local skating rink is having a Taylor Swift night.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be, so that'll be me and a lot of 12, 13-year-old girls screaming Taylor Swift and all that stuff too. And yes, and I'm for it. This is something I get to connect with my daughter with and just be able to spend time with them and be silly and all that kind of stuff too. So it's going to be interesting. And, if anybody sees me on a Friday night and singing Taylor Swift skating around thing,
I'm just interested. I'm interested to know how many songs you're going to be able to completely sing along to. That's what I want to know. So
I think I got at least a couple.
That's right. I think you can do it. Well, what are we going to be talking about today?
So today, we've talked about a ton of entrepreneurial topics over the last really year and a half as we've kind of evolved this podcast, and I think as we're kind of spending more time diving into these kind of things, I think it's one thing that's necessary to talk about because we're all at different places in this journey about how cyclical this can be. Because we're going to go through these times of feeling like I've got it, I'm good. And then the next thing happens or the next challenge comes like, man, I really suck at this. Or I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so how that whole journey can really be a cyclical thing, and you're going to have those up and downs. And I think the biggest thing is that that's a normal thing.
Absolutely. Allowing ourselves to understand that, like, the best way it was described to me, it's like a slinky. And so when you think about a slinky, you can pull it, but at some point, if you continue to pull, it's going to get bent. And it doesn't matter when it comes back together, it's going to look a little funny.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to understand our organizations are a lot like a slinky. Maybe you have, a small size slinky, then you're going to pull it out. Well, then you gotta take it back, put it on the shelf, get another one, and then start expanding again.
Yeah.
And it's the art is knowing when do you have to let go and maybe lose a little bit of revenue or revenue generating time. Yeah. But what you're going to do is you're going to create something that's going to be able to stretch farther than you were able to before.
Yeah. And I think there's so many things to unpack with that. And I'm smiling because I'm just thinking about my journey. So a couple weeks ago, I've been 8 years of owning a physical therapy and leading a physical therapy business. And I think about kind of where I was at the start and where I am now, and all the evolution with those things. So, I mean, I think both you and Daniel will agree that when we're starting out, it's all that excitement and you've got full control over everything because usually it's just you or maybe one other person and all that. And so, and there's things we learn along as we kind of navigate through those things. But then we start adding staff members and different things like that. And that's a whole different skill set.
Absolutely.
And so what we do is we kind of go through these cycles of, I'm killing it, man. I'm doing really, really good. I'm really confident in how we're doing, how we got things set up and all that kind of stuff. And then the first things happen that you don't know what to do. And man, this is a really interesting time because I don't have any experience with this and I don't know what to do with this. That's a recipe for feeling like you suck.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you have staff members and they're looking to you and you don't and so you think you know what you do, but then they're like, man, I'm making mistakes on these things.
100%.
How did I handle that? All that kind of stuff.
I think that's why it's so important to take the time to, having Ian on our podcast, absolutely loved it. It was a wonderful podcast. But the one thing that, he resonates with so many entrepreneurs, and we all do, is talk about, I don't really celebrate my success. I'm
Yeah.
always looking forward. And
Yeah.
and I understand that creates a mindset of absolute growth, but also at the same time, if we don't take that step to, I don't want to say reminisce, but to look at what we've done. Okay, we've these few things we want to do better. Okay, let's figure out how to do it. If we don't go to halftime, that you think about sports, you think about the fact there's halftime for a reason.
Yeah.
And how many times have you seen a team go into halftime and they're maybe not playing, they're not executing, and then all of a sudden they come out and then boom, they're firing on all cylinders. And so to me, I think that we have to look at it like a sports game. You have to understand that timeouts, half times, those things are necessary so that you can make sure that you're executing.
Yeah. And I think, I think we can kind of use that halftime as a euphemism, because essentially you just need to have time for introspection and for appreciating where you are, being able to think about it. Because a lot of times we just get caught up in that. Well, we just got to go, 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 go. And that leaves no time for actually reflecting on what is going on and having that appreciation for where you are and that gratitude for where you are, but then also really having that time to actually think about what's going on and what the future could be, or what's even happening in the present. If we're constantly just grinding, doing all that, you don't have that mental space to be able to think, do those things. I think one thing that I've noticed is, especially for me, is as we've progressed from a company of 2 doctors and a front desk to now 17 employees and different things like that, the challenges are different. But what I'm also seeing too is that I've had to evolve so much as a leader within that and how we do things. And the way I ran the company when we had 4 or 5 employees is a lot different than what it's needed now.
Yeah.
And so also what I'm seeing now is that some of the things that I did way back then now kind of come back around of, well, this isn't how we used to do it, kind of thing. And so then it's all right. So now you've got challenges now we've kind of got to re-onboard people, and we got to get people, this is the next level that we need to be at. And that's a whole different challenge, because now you're basically having to adjust these things that were the tenets 4 years ago, that now they need to be different because we're in a different spot as a company, that kind of thing too. Those are really big challenges to be able to navigate through and do it well.
Absolutely. You move into a different environment. It may take different, you might need a certain amount of water to grow in this season, but in another season, in order to not experience a drought, you've got to, keep it flowing. I think two of the biggest things for me in regards to that is, number one, for me, it's ultimately at a smaller agency. I always believed that, I don't need to put notes in for the clients because I always remember, I know all my people, or there's a system a buddy of mine named David created called Risk Advisor, and it would ask all this information about a home and a this or that. And I was like, man, we don't need all that. We've got this, that, and the other. Well, now a few years later, whenever my team is doing requotes and they're doing, these things that I wrote a few years back, where they're like, they don't know these folks like I know them. And if I would have just done that thing that was a little bit more difficult years ago, well, now all of a sudden life would be a little bit easier. And so I think sometimes we have to look, well, let's take ourselves away from the situation. How can we best run this organization if we were running it from, behind a glass wall, and we just had to maybe interject a few things, or send in a few things, but there's a team running this organization. I think it's so hard to believe that's ever possible. But number two is leading by example. It is creating a new process, but then you being the first one to do it every time. Because I don't know about you, but I find myself like, they need to do that, but I don't really need to do that because, it's me and I know what's going on in my head. And man, that sets such a bad example. And so to my team that listens to this, I apologize. And I'm working very hard to lead by example and do those things. But those to me are just two things that stick out like a sore thumb when I think about this progression and growth.
I agree, especially for all of y'all out there that are kind of a little bit earlier in the process, is the more that you can have some guidance on ways to set yourself up for future success, that makes a huge, huge
Yeah.
difference. And but some of it is just learning as you go
That's
and
right.
learning from your mistakes and all that kind of stuff too. Um, but the other part of that is with the leading by example things is what I've found with is all of our staff, and we want everyone to be involved in things.
Mhm.
And to borrow a quote from the giant worldwide leadership coaching stuff, it's ideally, we want every staff member to believe that their leadership is for them.
Mm,
And so they're doing the best things that you can for those staff members.
that's great.
And part of that is having them involved in the processes of these things. The last thing we want to do is, okay, we're doing this, this, and this, and this is just how it is, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And you know, so sometimes that might be necessary when it needs to be a fast thing, but for the most part, the more that we can have people involved in these things
Mhm.
to where they have a vested interest, that makes a huge, huge difference as you grow and as things change. Because most people just want to understand what's going
Absolutely.
on, and they want to make sure, and they want to feel supported with those things
Yeah.
too.
A lot of times they
That's,
can bring such good feedback that
yeah,
helps you make the process all the easier. You know, for me, really thinking about this and just trying to say, okay, well, what are some things as a like someone who's in a small business, or Jeremy, that's, or you know, Jim, that's 3 years away. That seems like forever. I might not even exist then. The truth is, if you're working hard, if you're putting in the work now, likely it's going to grow.
yeah,
Okay, like you're watering a plant, it's going to grow. It goes from being really difficult to getting easier, but then it's depending on how much you prepared is going to determine that next level of
yep,
difficulty, you know? And so for me, when I'm thinking about some key things that you can look to do and add to these as we go, because this is just, you know, improv. We're
yep,
talking real as we go. And so number one for me is create an investment, like create a little bit of a budget line item
hmm,
that says, okay, maybe I don't need it today, but let's start putting $30, $40 a month to the side, and we're going to revisit this in a year and a half, whatever it is, to where, okay, now I'm ready to take that next level. Should I invest in a mastermind group or a coaching session with someone who's in my field that I can, now I don't have to pretend that I don't have the money for that. I don't have this, because I chose to invest and take the time to plan for that accordingly. Would you agree that that would be kind of a wise, easy way to get started with that?
I think having that allocated
Hmm.
is because then you're not worried about, okay, well, I don't want to spend this money to do this. I need to put that money somewhere else. If you just have that from the start, I think that makes it a really easy thing, and you're much more likely
That's right.
to do that. I think as we're talking about this thing, I think my number one thing that I would say for if we as we progress, and something I wish that I would have done more is get really good at communication.
Hmm.
And because as you know, when we start, we control everything. Everything's in our head, like you were saying.
Hmm.
As we add more people, we can't assume that somebody knows they the what we know, or is going to approach situations the same way with that. So we need to have that practice of effectively communicating how we do things, what the expectations are,
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Because in my experience, as we've evolved over time, is generally those have been the things that cause
Hmm.
issues when there's a lack of understanding, when communication hasn't been as good as what it needed to be. And I will wholly own that I have not been the best communicator.
Sure, sure.
And I think that's something that we really need to evolve and practice, and really you just got to get the reps with
Absolutely.
it, and just having the good
Hmm.
conversations, being able to teach people how you do it. How do you teach somebody how can we give our prospective customer the best possible experience when you're doing quoting for them and
That's
all that
right.
kind of stuff too. And the same thing, and vice versa for me, with how we treat our patients and
That's
all that
right.
kind of stuff too. But then also having that ability to be able to have
Hmm.
a tough conversation, but have it still be a productive thing too, and not shying away from
Yeah.
those things, because it's not fun
Yeah.
to do that, but it's also something that's necessary, because what you're going to end up seeing is that people just don't have as much clarity as what they need. if
right.
they're not being given that feedback with it too. And it's absolutely a skill to be able to do that and do it in a productive manner.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And that's the biggest thing for me is that, I go back and what you're saying reminds me of, I was at a Bible study this morning and we're talking about, really, we were doing the Strength Finder 2.0 and a few things, but ultimately it talked about like, what were all your occupations, post high school, post college,
Mhm.
and how did they guide you to where you are in your personalities and your strengths? And, really got me thinking and, just having that just thankful mindset of, I was in a hospital setting, got in trouble for spending too much time with patients,
Yeah.
and things like that. But that's the whole thing that's led me to here is that I get to create the experience.
Yep.
I get to create the process. I get to ignite that fire in my team to where they see how much us taking that extra minute, the extra 3 minutes, the extra 5 minutes, all from the video process to we do step 1 through 6 for a reason. But then also just being so thankful that I have this opportunity. The Lord's created this opportunity where I get to create that
Yeah.
avenue.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we just forget. We just say, "Oh, this is a business," and we run it and this, that. But like we are designing outcomes in people's lives, and if we really we can get excited about that because we put ourselves, or we've been blessed to get to this position, whether we're working for someone or that, to where we have this ability to create those outcomes. And man, how special is that? But also to own where maybe you have some failures.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really cool position to be
Mhm.
in. And and we're all gonna have these ups and downs. And if as you progress through your career too, and you feel like you need guidance and you have um coaches or different groups that you're part of and different things like that. And I'll tell you one thing is especially for someone who has not had that, um, it's a very essential and a really, really important thing to have, and to have somebody that's external to your
Mhm.
organization to really give you some honest feedback on things. I will also say too that usually it's an interesting process of you're going to go through. It's like, man, I feel like I'm doing pretty well,
Yeah.
and then you have somebody call you out on something that like,
Mhm.
man, you're just really not good at this, and this is your blind spot and all
Yep.
that stuff, and that's a tough pill to swallow.
And you have to be willing to hear it,
You do,
and so
you
that's why I
do.
think another thing when people say, "Well, Jeremy, it's so hard for me to create," I can do some of these things, but here's something that doesn't really cost money. Find businesses like yours that you want to be like,
Mm-hmm.
and just ask them out to coffee, ask them out to lunch, ask them for a phone call. And ultimately the biggest question I want you to ask is what mistakes did you make?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you wish, like, Jim, I absolutely love the organization that you've built over 8 years. The fact that you've gone from, an organization that you were a part of to creating your own because of this belief that you had that things could be better, to this amazing team that you have. But Jim, my biggest question to you is what if you could go back today?
Yeah.
What are a few things that you would do differently? Because my goal is to be like you. My goal, and once again, when you're telling someone that and you're making them feel good about what they built, do you think they're honestly not going to take a few minutes and share? And you better be writing these things
Oh,
down,
absolutely.
taking
Yeah.
this information,
Yeah.
and I think that's what we have to do is not be scared to imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yeah.
Don't be scared to go out and ask and to learn and to implement.
Yeah.
Ask, learn, implement. Ask, learn, implement. That is the biggest thing. Any one of those without the other, it's
Yeah.
pointless.
And I think what most people will find is that the people that are in the place that you want to be are more than happy to help and share with those things too. If they're not, they're probably not the person that you want to be
Mhm.
emulating
That's
with it
right.
too. So I think that's gosh, we've covered a good bit of stuff
We have.
with
And
this since.
I will say one last thing and we'll cut it off because I think you'll agree with this too, is with a lot of my coaching clients, what I will say to them is mistakes are only mistakes if you let them be.
Yeah.
The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is whenever something happens, like a client interaction or something like an email, or someone says, well, you didn't tell me that wasn't in the contract. That happened. You need to own it in that moment,
Yep.
but send yourself an email, set a reminder. If you have a coach, go ahead and text a coach. This happened. We need to talk about it. I tell my people all the time, when something happens, text me. We need to talk about it. I'm going to put it in our planner. And then we're going to talk about creating a process or something to where that will not happen again.
Yeah.
A mistake once can be a plant.
Yeah.
A mistake over and over again become weeds.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's my thing is like, let it happen. Let's remember it. Let's create a process to get around it. And guess what's going to happen when all of your problems, you create processes for them. Like that's
Business
whenever you
health,
can
yeah.
conquer the world. And so I think that's another simple solution that
Oh,
we
yeah.
can do as we grow.
Yeah, I love that.
Perfect. Well, guys, it's been great. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Back to some content. Jim's back in the house. You see how my excitement, my just level that happens when I'm in a room with this man. We are excited and ready for our next. We got a guest coming up on the next, which is going to be a
It's
lot of
gonna be
fun.
cool. Yep.
You guys have a good one.